Good afternoon and welcome to the Middleton Chamber's October Economic Development Update. We are pleased to welcome the Madison Development Corp with us today to kind of talk about workforce housing in Dane County. So before we get started, a huge thank you to our sponsors that are listed here on the page. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to pull off these programs. So we really appreciate them helping us to provide opportunities for our membership to learn more. So a few reminders on etiquette. Remember, if that slash is through your microphone on the bottom, you are on mute. We would encourage you to do that. We will have time for you guys at the end to answer or to ask questions. Also, feel free to type them into chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout and being able to ask Lori those questions. With that, I would love to introduce Lori from the Madison Development Corp. We will be finishing today with an update from the city of Middleton. So first, Lori is the president and CEO of the Madison Development Corporation, which she joined in 2016 and has helped significantly grow the workforce housing assets and their lending and investment funds. Lori is a champion of workforce housing and is working with the Economic Stability Council of Dane County to help finance the creation of more affordable workforce housing units in Dane County by partnering with employers and developers in our region. So with that, Lori, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kristen. I really appreciate it. So Madison Development Corporation has been around for over 40 years. We were established in 1977, and we primarily, our mission is to provide affordable workforce housing and also provide lending to hard to finance businesses. So today, the topic of our discussion is going to be all about workforce housing. So I want to make sure the first thing I do is have each one of our team members introduce themselves, because nobody can grow an organization without a really great team. So I'm going to start with Abby, who's the Middleton Chamber member, by introducing herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abby Walhouse. I am the CFO of Madison Development Corporation, and I have been with MDC since 2018. Thanks for having us.
Go ahead,
Cash. I'll go next. My name is Laufenberg. I have been with Madison Development Corporation for about 6.5 years now. I'm the Director of Property Management for the company, and I will turn it over to Jill.
Hi everyone, my name is Jillian Schaefer. I've been with MDC for about a year now as the lending and leasing assistant, so I get to help on both sides of our company. Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen Berncott. I think I'm the newest of the team. I started in January. My role is like leasing and compliance specialist, and so I have several years of experience working in the affordable housing industry.
And I think Fred's on too, right?
Yes. Hello. Hi, my name is Fred McConnell. I am the VP of Lending and Investments for Madison Development Corporation. Been on the team since August of last year, and really enjoy working with the team and Lori. We're really excited about just being a resource.
So thank you, MDC team. I really appreciate it. So I am fairly new to affordable housing, and I've only actually been at this position for about 4 years. So I thought the first thing we'd start with today is really what is affordable housing, why it's needed, and who's working on solving the issue by creating more units. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so workforce housing. You can ask people who've been in the business for decades what it is. And so what we're defining it as housing that is targeted at households whose income, in other words, if there's 2 people in the household, the total household income basically ranges between $40,000 to $80,000 per year. It's kind of the missing middle. MDC, as a mission-based affordable housing provider, we actually have 349 units of multifamily workforce housing in the Madison and Dane County area, including in Middleton. And as Cashin can tell you a little bit later, our vacancy rates are very, very low. There's a very high demand. And our rents, also on workforce housing, it's important to note that the rents are based on the source of funds. So if it happens to be Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Association, which has tax credit projects, the rents are determined by HUD. If it happens to be city home funds, that's another source of funding that really determines the rents. So as we go through some kind of sample rents and talk about family size, it's just important to know that workforce housing is really targeted at those people who make between $40,000 to $80,000 a year. And there are certain benefits that an affordable housing provider gets if they can keep those rents low. And there are certain types of sources of funds that they can get because of that. So the final thing about affordable housing is to make sure that the household itself is not cost burdened. And, you know, if you've read some of Kurt Paulson's report on the Dane County Needs Assessment, being cost burdened is basically paying more than 30% of your income for housing costs, such as rent and utilities. So we try not to cost burden our tenants by making sure that that 30 to 35% that they're not paying more than that in their rent, but that is a requirement in many of the sources of funding. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so what's the need? So the need has basically been defined a little bit by Kurt Paulson in his 2019 Dane County Housing Needs Assessment. It's anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 units per year. So basically over the next 20 years, about 40,000 units of all types of housing is needed, but particularly in the workforce housing ranges, like between 30 to 40% or 30 to 80% of the area median income. So again, that's that target where you have one or two people working in a household and they can't find the affordable housing here as easily as it was in the past because of the fact that there's great jobs, there's a lot of growth in Middleton, I see as well, and throughout Dane County, and it's forcing a lot of these employees to find places outside of the county, have long commutes, and as you know, here in Wisconsin, that can involve ice and snow and expense, and it's just a very tough situation to be able to find quality, affordable housing here in the Madison area. So, you know, we know that over the past decade, the population continues to grow. I was looking at Middleton's growth numbers, and basically you've, you know, gone from 17,000 to well over, you know, 25,000. And, you know, that's going on across the entire area. So that number of housing units, however, has not kept up with that. So even though we see a lot of development, particularly JT Klein did a couple of nice developments in your backyard, it's still not enough. So there are people who are actually working on this problem. So if you would go to the next slide, please, Jillian. Here's who's working on it. There are quite a few nonprofits, about 13 to 15 of us in the Madison, Dane County area, including Moving Out, Madison Development Corporation, Commonwealth. There's for-profit developers like JT Klein, which has done several projects in Middleton. Gorman does projects regionally across the entire United States. And Stonehouse Development is also a for-profit developer, but they develop low to moderate income or what we would consider affordable workforce housing. And then finally, the other group that's just now starting to work on it include employers in the region. And we're enabling them to get involved in helping solve this problem by creating what's called the Dane Workforce Housing Fund. This was an idea that came together through the United Way when Rich Lynch was chair of the board and Renee Moe, and you know, she had asked what were the causes of poverty and what was the most important thing, and they decided to focus on having affordable workforce housing here in the area. So Madison Development Corporation was brought on in May of last year to kind of help put a fund together, and that fund is the Dane Workforce Housing Fund. So next. Okay, so I'm going to start with just, before I get too much into the Dane Workforce Housing Fund, which I will get into, I'm just going to go back, I think it's back one slide, Jillian. So this is an example. This is Madison Development Corporation's newest development. This is at 1946 East Washington Avenue in Madison, and it's on the Avenue site. We're naming it after James A. Grasskamp, the famous UW-Madison professor, because it's completely universally designed. But this conception, I think, a lot of times of affordable housing, that it's not quality, is really not accurate. When you look at a lot of the new units that are going up, this particular property, and Cashin can give you an update on it, but this particular property, we have 44 units in it. They're universally designed. We have stainless steel appliances, granite countertops. We have an exercise gym. We have underground parking, and we have a leasing office in it. And I think we just got occupancy here back in August, and I think we're pretty close to 40 to 42 of the 44 are already rented. So it's filling up fairly quickly, and we're very pleased with that. Just to give you an idea of what the rents are, the rents for like a studio or efficiency ranges from $681 to $739 per month, again, depending on your income. If you make $50,000 a year, you're going to pay a different amount versus if you're making $80,000 a year. We also have 15 one-bedroom apartments with 1 bath that range from $829 to $1,029, and 21 two-bed, 2-bath units ranging from $908 to $1,400, and some even go as high as $1,600 if they're considered market. And then we have 5 3-bedroom, 2-bath with washers and dryers actually in the units from $1,000 to $1,648. So that just kind of gives you an idea. And then later, when there's kind of a Q&A, I would definitely ask Cashin about some of the rents that he's seeing in the marketplace. So if we go to the next slide. It's affordable for at least 15 years. So that was the goal. And of course, the reason why was employees can't afford to work and live in Dane County, you know, causing long commutes, lost time, unproductive work due to the lost time. So the status, this actually was as of 8/1. The status is we actually just raised this morning, our last investor came in. We have 11.85 million. We have great investors. I can tell you that one of the investors right in your backyard, the University of Wisconsin Hospitals and Clinics, I think they employ 800 people in the Middleton area. They are one of our lead investors. So we have 11 lead investors at $1 million each. And we have a couple more that are at $500,000 and $250,000. Madison Development Corporation is also an investor in this fund. And we started with our first investment committee meeting on Monday, and we hope to be able to make an announcement within a couple of weeks on funding that first project. So we're very excited about this, and you know, the employers in your area are helping to support it. We have Exact Sciences, University of Wisconsin, we've got Madison Gas and Electric. I know that they're members of your chamber as well. And we've got several banks, First Business Bank, Park Bank, Oak Bank, and also certainly Monona Bank. So we can go to the next slide. This is just an example of, I think, a really well done project here. It's Oak Ridge in Middleton. Of course, you are all very familiar with it. It's independent senior living on Lisa Lane by J.T. Klein and Company. Jacob, we expect him to do many more projects here in Dane County, and we are looking at a project that he's looking at right now. And we think that, you know, we can really fill some gaps in funding. And, you know, when you have projects this size, you can easily, you know, make a dent in those units. This one happens to be 83 units, but Jacob has been doing developments of 100 to 120 units. Unlike the nonprofits, we're a little bit smaller. We tend to do smaller projects, maybe, you know, 40 to 50 units, but we need all types of housing. And this is just a really good example of what's happening right in your backyard. So with that, I just would like to leave it open for questions from any one of our team members, depending on how the question comes through. And then I will say, I do have to excuse myself at 12:30, so I apologize for that. I have to go to a funeral, but I am definitely here till 12:30, so we welcome your questions.
Hi, Lori. Wonderful presentation. Thank you. And just a question for you. What's the relationship between MDC and the Economic Stability Council? Are you guys one of their many investors?
The relationship between MDC and the Economic Stability Council, the Economic Stability Council is a group of people put together that's just kind of an informal committee, and they're actually probably going to disband after this fund has been launched. Our relationship with them is that we were hired to actually develop the fund and then to work with them to bring in the investors. So that's what we've done. We actually came to a complete halt in March, and then Rich Lynch and I got out there and started talking to the employers again, and we were able to bring in the 14 investors, including Madison Development Corporation. We are also an investor in the fund. So our relationship is we are the managing members of the fund. We have Abby Walhouse here with us, and who is our VP of Finance, as well as our VP of Lending, Fred McConnell, and we are the managers of this Dane Workforce Housing Fund. And then we actually will source deals, so developers should come to us if they have a gap in financing and they agree to make their units affordable. So we also source them, and we put the investment committee together, and then we vote, and then we execute on the loans and the process. So we are basically the managers of this fund, and we do expect this to be fund number one, because if the way the demand is going, we think that this fund will be fully invested within the next 2 to 3 years, and we'll be looking at fund number 2 so that we can continue to address the issue.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lori,
I'm
looks like
wondering-
there's one question that came in through chat.
Okay.
What is the housing gap of units on the affordable side in Middleton?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question for Kurt Paulson. I do not know that. Cashin, can you take a stab at that?
Well, I mean, I can discuss. We have 76 units in Middleton off Allen Boulevard, and you know they're very affordable. And I can say, as soon as we have an apartment come available there, it's met with high demand, and it's usually leased within a week or two. So there's definitely a demand for more affordable housing in that area.
And it's my understanding, you know, from the Madison or the Middleton Area Economic Development Corporation, because we work with them in other regards, that there are a large number of employees that work in the Middleton area that can't afford to live there. So they are basically living elsewhere and then driving into Middleton. So they're really, the MAEDC is really focused on trying to get more affordable workforce housing built in the Middleton area as well. And they're also partners in our venture debt fund, which we also run at MDC, to kind of help those high-tech companies grow and get the capital that they need to stay in Dane County.
So this is an opportunity for you guys. If you'd like to take yourselves off of mute, please feel free to do so to ask those questions. Otherwise, we will hang out here in chat for another minute or two. And we do still have Abby from the City of Middleton with her update yet.
Well, thank you.
All right, Abby, I'm not seeing any other questions come. Oh, there we go. There's one from Patrick. How does the typical renter find out about these housing opportunities?
I guess I can kind of take that question since that's, you know, our department. So, you know, our main advertisements by word of mouth, I would say, is the biggest, because once you have families who find that affordable housing, you'll notice they're referred by other residents. You know, we obviously use our website, Craigslist, and then we also kind of have a relationship with the Tenant Resource Center. Sometimes every month or two, they'll reach out and ask, you know, about affordable units we have coming available, what the pricing will be and stuff like that. So we work with some programs as well, and just I know they follow our website. They have our website listed on like the Tenant Resource Center. So that way people, you know, who are looking for affordable housing, you know, we pop up and, you know, we can show what we have coming available.
I would just add to that, you know, because I know that when we do advertising, it's primarily on a Bodo, is it? And you know, campus downtown and different sites, and it's income based, right? So if you see a range of rents, that means it's income based. So that is typically affordable housing, because depending, you can literally have the exact same apartment across the hallway, the exact same layout, exact same features, and depending on your income, one person could be paying $1,000 for it, and the person across the hallway could be paying $1,200 for it. And that's kind of what mixed income is, and that's the way affordable workforce housing is going, is that you don't want one entire property with all very low income. You want to have mixed income. You want to have people who make $30,000 all the way up to people that make $80,000 or $100,000. So that's kind of the new way that these projects are going through now, and I think it's much better than having a high concentration where a lot of services are needed.
Lori, I have a question for you. The Dane Fund is open to all the developers in Dane County, not just for Madison. I would expect that would include Middleton as well.
Absolutely. It is definitely open to all developers that are developing projects in Dane County, including Middleton and Fitchburg and Corona and Wanakee. Yes. In fact, we do, we definitely are working with developers who have been active in Middleton. And it's to just kind of fill the gap. We're not the primary lender. We fill the gap and so if it's a $20 million project and they've got a $2 million gap, they can get the rest of their money through equity or through their primary bank. We come in and we fill that gap. And then for that gap, all of the units that we finance, we put on what's called a land use restriction agreement, so known as a LURA. And that land use restriction agreement requires that even if they sell the property, those units that the fund finance have to have that affordability component. And then our compliance team, which is headed up by Cashin and Karen, who is also on this call, they make sure that every year we'll get the rent rolls and make sure that if we need to verify income or there's other sources of funds that require that we're making sure that those are actually rented to households that fall in the income range under the 80% of the area median income.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Long dramatic pause for more questions. Okay, well, I think that the group from MDC is going to stick around, but at this time we're going to move on to Abby from the City of Middleton with an update what's going on in Middleton.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I will talk a little bit about the housing gap in Middleton. It's a little bit more complicated than just explaining a number, so I included in the chat a link to the 2019 Dane County Housing Needs Assessment. That's really the best source of information that all of us in the county are using right now to determine what that is in Middleton. We're really lucky that we work quite a bit with Kurt Paulson, who developed the Housing Needs Assessment. He's been very involved in our workforce housing committee in Middleton, and he's helped establish a lot of the workforce housing policies that we have in place in our community now. But before we get started on that, I just wanted to show you a lovely rendering and photograph of a recent project that was completed in the city. If you haven't checked it out yet, you'll have to drive up North Parmenter Street and check out the new Dama mural that was installed at the Municipal Operations Center. The left-hand side shows the rendering that the artists of the Dama studio gave to the city a few years ago in advance of starting the project. Then the right-hand side is the photograph. I think this is like the closest that I've ever seen a project come to the rendering. So we're really proud of the project. Dama is an artist team that works with students in the schools. And so Clark Street Community School students in Middleton, as well as our Middleton Youth Center, help to paint this design. And then they go and install it at the site. It's painted on polytab fabric. And then they actually have their professional artists go over it to make sure that it looks all like it's painted by one hand. So I'm really proud of the way that this project turned out and wanted to share it with you. At the last month's meeting, I provided a few updates on projects, and I just wanted to circle back with you all and let you know the status of those. The first was that the city was working on a TIF amendment to subtract about $100 million in valuation from TIF District 3, and that's amendment number 10. And just a quick update that now has been submitted to the Department of Revenue, and they'll be reviewing it over the next month or so. So we're excited to have that one off our plates. The second was the Middleton Economic Relief Loan Program that we're offering to local businesses in Middleton. That program has now been established in partnership with the Middleton Area Development Corporation, as well as the Chamber, who were very much involved with circulating the survey information to the different businesses to find out what kind of assistance businesses in our city needed. So that program, like I mentioned, we're now accepting applications. Loans range from $5,000 to $25,000. It's a 1% interest rate loan. And I believe the interest doesn't begin to accrue until early 2022. So you can check the Chamber weekly update to get a link to that, or you can also look at the main page of the city website, and it's right there on the main page. I also talked about different ways that the city is open to hearing from specific businesses about non-financial support that might be needed during these times. And I even opened it up for, you know, any particular business. Every business's needs are different right now. So if there's anything that the city can be doing to assist during this time, the best way to go about that would be to contact the alderperson for your district and start there. Just to give a recent example, we had a coffee shop on University Avenue that needed help getting a sign approved in city right-of-way because they didn't have any area on their own property where they could put their sign. So, you know, every business's needs are different, and if there are non-financial business support needs that you have, please convey those to your alderpersons, and they'll work with city staff to see if there's anything that can be done to assist. Another example is shown on the slide here. The city recently installed some temporary lighting at the Stone Horse Green in downtown Middleton next to the Village Green. The purpose is to help extend the season a bit for the businesses that are really relying on this small green space for carryout. And, you know, we can't really do much about the Wisconsin winters, but if people are willing to bundle up this fall and hopefully even maybe into the winter, this space is available for picnicking, and it's been fun to see the number of people who have been out using it. And again, that's temporary. The Stone Horse Green will hopefully be developed in 2021. Our department, Planning and Community Development, is in the process of circulating a draft of the city's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is the city's broad plan for the next 20 years, policies, land use, and different goals and actions that the city wants to undertake and support over the next 20 years. If you're interested in reviewing a copy of the plan, you can also get that on the city's website, specifically on the Department of Planning and Community Development page. And the listing here in the table of contents just shows the range of topics that are covered in this plan, everything from land use and transportation to housing and economic . Also out a path for the city over the next 20 years. We are circulating this to a variety of committees and commissions. We've been to 13 committees this month, and we still have some more. So we're still accepting feedback, and we're open to any thoughts that any members of the community have about the plan as well. During the public input component of the comp plan, we reached out to community members and we asked what was important to them. And that helped to identify a number of community values. And we have tried to use the values of community, sustainability, equity, health, accessibility, innovation, and resiliency throughout all chapters of the plan. So you're really going to see a focus on these because these were really the things that we heard most of all when we went around and talked to folks in the community. On the workforce housing front, I really enjoyed and appreciated hearing Lori's presentation and learning more about what MDC is doing to support workforce housing. Our city has been pretty involved in workforce housing initiatives over the last 20 years. It was really started by a former mayor, Mayor Doug Zwonk, who started with the premise that if somebody works in our city, they should be able to afford to live in our city. And of course, we know we're not there yet. Even, you know, many city employees can't afford to live in the city of Middleton. And so we're continuing to put forward goals and benchmarking to try to get the city to toward the goal of being more affordable for our employees. In 2015, Dane County released a housing needs assessment. It was the first comprehensive assessment of the housing needs in every community in the county, and they identified a housing gap for each community. And there were a couple of different ways to measure the housing gap. In 2015, Middleton's gap was anywhere from 295 units to 795 units of renter housing. And the low end measurement was simply the difference between the households in our community that were below 30% of area median income, so very low income individuals, and the number of units that were available and affordable to folks who are at or below 30% of area median income. So that's what that 295 unit number is comprised of. It's a pretty low measurement for the housing gap because it doesn't take into account the people who want to live in Middleton but aren't here because they can't afford to find a place to live in our community. So in 2015, working with Kurt Paulson, who was the chair of our workforce housing committee at the time, we set a goal of helping to incentivize the creation of 295 more units of workforce housing in the next 3 to 5 years. So we're in 2020 now, so we're at the tail end of the workforce housing strategy. And how have we done? Well, on the plus side, the goal was 295 units, and we have helped to create 389 units. And those are shown on the chart here on the right-hand side. Some of them are approved, but they're not under construction yet. So for example, 3810, which is up in Tribeca, that's a JT Klein project that's approved, it's not constructed. And the Trotta, which is being done by Impact 7 Development, that's the redevelopment of the old Colonial Motel site on Parmenter Street. Those are approved, they're not under construction. We do have one that's under construction currently, and that's the Addy. And the Addy has been stalled. You probably saw that the trucks stopped work on the site. That is getting restarted, and it's probably going to happen as early as in about a week or a week and a half. So that's good news for the Addy and people who are not thrilled looking at the partially constructed site. That's going to be 39 units of really high quality workforce housing right across the street from Willie Street Co-op in a really in an area that's really well served by transit and is close to a lot of jobs in our community. So we're very, very excited about that project. So I mentioned the goal of 295, and the good news that we've got 389 units that are either approved or have been constructed. Unfortunately, in 2019, the Dane County Housing Needs Assessment reevaluated those same metrics, and that same gap actually expanded. So in Middleton, the low measurement of the housing gap in 2019 is 420 units now. Another really good source of housing information is the vacancy rate. In Middleton, our vacancy rate is incredibly low. It's one of the lowest in the county. It's about 1.5%, and you can actually just Google MG&E rental vacancy rates, and you can pull it up. If it's in MG&E's service area, they identify on a quarterly basis the rental housing vacancy rate by zip code. We use it all the time. It's in Kurt's study. This is like really good information to have. Developers use it to determine the need and in different parts of MG&E's service area. So like I mentioned, our vacancy rate in Middleton is about 1.5%. A healthy vacancy rate, according to HUD, is about 5%. So we are way below a healthy vacancy rate that allows renters to really have choice in the market. And this is just showing renderings of these developments that are underway. This is the Trotta, the old Colonial Motel site. There's one vacant home on that site now. It's been that way since I came to Middleton 13 years ago. So we're very excited to see some infill housing development in really also great location, well served by transit, close to thousands of jobs. So this is the Trotta, and they expect to be breaking ground on this one soon. And then on the right-hand side is the Addy, and this is the one that's across from Willie Street Co-op, and construction will be restarting on this project soon. And that's all I have for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions about anything that's going on right now in the city. I also know we have our city administrator, Mike Davis, and our mayor, Gurdeep Brar, on the line as well, who I'm sure would also help out with any questions that you might have.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby. We appreciate that. At this time, we would just love to open it up. You guys, please feel free to take yourselves off of mute and ask any questions you have of the MDC group or of the City of Middleton group. And you can, like I said, take yourself off of mute or feel free to type those in the chat, and I'm happy to ask them on your behalf. No one wants to go first.
Abby, have you identified individual properties that the city of Middleton's looking at for, for multifamily development?
That's a great question. So in general, within the comp plan, we are identifying corridors. So, if an area is well served by transit, close to jobs, and is likely to require some investment. So to give an example, the University Avenue corridor is, in my opinion, it's a prime location for additional infill housing. If you look at what's happening in Madison, it's not too hard to imagine some of that development that's happening in the Hill Farms area, and even actually on the site that I think is the first site east of Middleton. There's a 4-story multifamily housing development that's under construction right now on the Madison side. So it's not hard to imagine how that's going to continue to kind of march west, and we're going to see demand for redevelopment of properties along University Avenue in Middleton. Especially, the pandemic is really changing demand for a number of different types of land uses, including office and retail. Those are kind of on the decline. And so any areas, along primary transportation corridors where you see like a 1-story strip mall with that's mostly retail, those kinds of properties are probably, gonna need to experience some investment over the next decade or so just to, remain viable. The Amazon effect has been further exacerbated by the pandemic. And so retail is it's really struggling right now. In addition to University Avenue, I think that the Parmenter corridor is a primary focus for the city. We haven't identified individual sites within the comprehensive plan, but we have the TIF district plans, TIF District 5 and TIF District 3, where we have gone as far as identifying sites. And when we do that, we, of course, work with the property owner and make sure we have some consensus around that before we go deciding what's going to happen on particular parcels. But there are several parcels within the 2 TIF district plans that have identified locations for workforce housing.
We did have a question pop into chat. So will zoning be addressed as part of the comprehensive plan to expand capacity for existing parcels?
That's a great question. So the comprehensive plan in itself is not a regulatory document. So a lot of people think about planning and their mind goes to zoning because that is the way that most people interact with our department. But the state statute does require that several ordinances that the city maintains are consistent with the comprehensive plan. And so we're updating the comprehensive plan right now, and the goal is to overhaul the zoning ordinance next year. And we have that approved in the city budget because that's something we're going to require some outside expertise. And we're going to hire a consulting firm to help us with the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance in Middleton is really outdated. It's actually older than I am, and it needs to be completely overhauled at this point. What we're seeing is that the zoning ordinance isn't keeping up with what people actually want to construct now in 2020. And so a lot of properties are getting rezoned to Planned Development District, or PDD, which is a flexible zoning code. And it can be a really great tool to use to encourage mixed use and kind of more creative land development patterns. But on the administrative side, it can be really challenging for a very small staff to administer 100 different sets of zoning documents, basically. So we really want to make sure that our updated code reflects the demands that we're seeing in the market. One of the changes that our Plan Commission is looking at is the idea of being more flexible to things like accessory dwelling units, ADUs, where you could have, you know, a granny flat above your garage. So those kinds of things we are looking at allowing in the new code. We still have to develop all the parameters around it, and that will happen as we go through the process next year. But we do want to be flexible for those real low density infill opportunities within established neighborhoods. But for the most part, the goal would be to protect established neighborhoods in the city from, you know, a 4-story building right in the middle of a neighborhood that's mostly single family. We would want to infill within established neighborhoods in a way that we're not, you know, adversely affecting the character of the neighborhood, but really focusing some of that redevelopment and infill development at a higher level of density, although it's still considered, I think, medium density, but would be along the major arterial streets.
All right, well, with that, I just want to, we're going to stay on here for a few more minutes and answer any other questions that you guys are thinking of or would like to ask. But I do want to thank all of our sponsors listed here on the screen. Again, without their support, they help us, the chamber, make these possible, so we appreciate that. A huge thank you to the MDC team for taking time to share your presentation, and then also to Abby from the city for providing a great update also on what's going on. To plug 2 upcoming chamber events, next week, Tuesday, we do have a business boost. SVA is going to be presenting on how to kind of transition and leave your business, so you can sign up through that for the website. And also then the next event then is our Get Moving Middleton for November. So those will both be virtual events that you can sign up on the chamber's website. So like I said, we will stay on and answer any additional questions, but thank you to everyone for joining today, and we appreciate you.